I used to believe that love for me had an expiration date, not because I didn't value it, but because I had already broken enough things trying to hold on to it. The room is quiet tonight. Just the faint hum of electricity in the walls, a lamp in the corner casting a soft circle of light across the desk, papers I haven't touched in hours, a cold cup of coffee I forgot to finish. This is usually the hour when my mind runs numbers, solves problems, builds futures. Instead, it keeps returning to you. I never planned for that. After everything, I had made a quiet agreement with myself. I would focus on the work, on responsibility, on the things that feel measurable, predictable, contained. Love had always felt volatile, powerful, yes, but unstable, and instability in most areas of life carries consequences. So I convinced myself I was done with it, not bitter, not resentful, just finished. I told myself that I had experienced it enough to understand its cost. And then you walked into my life in the most unremarkable way. No dramatic entrance, no spark that rewrote physics, just conversation. You disagreed with me about something small. I don't even remember what it was. I only remember that you didn't seem impressed, or intimidated, or eager to be anywhere else. You were just present. That word has taken on a different meaning for me now. Presence. It sounds simple, almost insignificant, but it's rare. My world is loud. Even when it's quiet, it's loud. There are constant demands, decisions, expectations pressing in from every direction. People speak quickly, move quickly, want quickly. You didn't. You listened in full sentences. You paused before responding. You asked questions that weren't strategic, and for the first time in a long time I felt something I hadn't realized I'd been missing. Space. Not physical space. Emotional space. With you, I didn't feel like a projection, or a headline, or a problem to solve. I was just a man sitting across from you, explaining why I think too much and sleep too little. And you didn't try to fix that. You simply nodded. It unsettled me at first. I'm used to momentum, movement. If something feels good, I accelerate it. If something feels uncertain, I analyze it. With you, I hesitated because I knew what happens when I let myself care. I've loved before, deeply, and I've failed before, deeply. Not out of cruelty, not out of indifference, but because I didn't yet understand that ambition, when left unchecked, can quietly consume intimacy. I used to believe that if I worked hard enough, built enough, solved enough, everything else would align. But love doesn't respond to scale. It responds to attention. I learned that too late. There were nights in past relationships when I was physically present but mentally elsewhere, running simulations in my head while someone I cared about sat beside me, waiting to be seen. I regret that, not in a self-punishing way, just honestly. I didn't know then what I know now, that the smallest moments are the ones that endure. The way you fold your hands when you're thinking, the way you look out a window before answering something personal, the silence between us that never felt heavy. I remember one evening in particular. Nothing special happened. We sat on opposite ends of a couch. You were reading. I was staring at a notebook, pretending to work. The room was dim. The world outside felt distant. At some point, you reached over without looking and rested your hand lightly on my arm. You didn't say anything. You didn't need to. It was the most ordinary gesture. And somehow, it rearranged something inside me. Because it wasn't intense. It wasn't dramatic. It was steady. I realized then that I had mistaken intensity for depth in the past. The highs, the passion, the urgency. I thought that was proof of love. But depth is quieter. Depth is the way someone remains when nothing extraordinary is happening. I didn't fall for you in a single moment. It was incremental, a shift in how I measured time, a softening in how I held myself. I began to notice that when something difficult happened during the day, you were the person I wanted to tell. Not for advice, not for solutions, just to share the weight. That was new for me. I've always carried weight alone, not because I enjoy it, but because I assumed it was mine to carry. You just stood beside it. And that changed everything. I won't pretend I wasn't afraid. There were nights I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, asking myself whether I had the right to let someone close again. Whether I had learned enough, grown enough, or whether I would repeat the same pattern, prioritize the future at the expense of the present. You never pressured me for answers. You didn't demand promises. In fact, you seemed comfortable with uncertainty in a way that made me uncomfortable. I live in projections, forecasts, timelines. You lived in today. It was disarming. There were moments when I almost pulled away. Not because you did anything wrong, but because I felt the old instinct rising. Protect yourself, minimize risk, stay contained. And then, I would remember the way you looked at me when I was quiet, not asking for performance, Just asking for honesty. You once told me, very softly, you don't always have to be strong. I didn't know what to do with that sentence. Strength has been a survival mechanism, a necessity, a habit. But with you, strength started to look different. It looked like saying, I'm tired. It looked like admitting when I felt uncertain. It looked like staying in the room instead of escaping into work. I didn't mean to let myself love you. That's the truth. I thought I had closed that chapter of my life. But love isn't a chapter. It's not something you file away once it becomes complicated. It returns in new forms, softer forms, sometimes after it ends. Because here's the part that surprised me most. Even after we drifted apart, the feeling didn't collapse into resentment. There was no explosion, no betrayal. Just the quiet recognition that timing and growth don't always synchronize perfectly. And in the space that followed, I began to see more clearly. I saw where I still held back, where I still measured my worth by output instead of presence, where I mistook providing for connecting. Losing you, if that's even the right word, didn't feel like punishment. It felt like a mirror. You showed me what I'm capable of being when I slow down. You showed me that love doesn't have to be chaotic to be real. Some nights, like tonight, I sit in this quiet room and think about the version of me that met you. Guarded, efficient, slightly detached. And I compare him to the man sitting here now, softer, more aware of how fragile time actually is, more careful with it. I don't know what our story means in the long arc of my life. Maybe it was brief, maybe it was transitional, maybe it was exactly as long as it needed to be. But I know this. You reminded me that my heart hadn't shut down. It had just been waiting for something steady enough to trust. I don't need to reclaim what we had. There's no urgency here, just gratitude. For the ordinary evenings, for the silence that felt safe, for the way you saw me, not as what I produce, not as what I represent, but as a person trying imperfectly to balance gravity and tenderness. I never meant to open that door again, but I'm glad I did, even if only for a while. The lamp is still on, the coffee is still cold. Outside, the night continues without commentary, and for the first time in a long time, I don't feel the need to fill the silence. I just sit with it, and with the quiet understanding that loving you didn't undo me, it refined me. That's enough.